We ended the last episode with the children of Bor and Besla, Odin, Vili and Ve. It is important to say that at this time there was still no world or landmass within Ginnungagap except for Niflheim, Muspelheim and Ymir in between them. The Dark Void still had no skies, lands nor stars, making it a truly somber place indeed. So you can imagine that the three brothers weren't exactly happy that their only neighbors were noisy, smelly and constantly annoying giants. The gods got, at one point, infuriated with the irritating giants to such a degree that they decided to speak to them in an attempt to teach them how to be better neighbors. The giants, however, weren't so keen on heeding the wishes of the gods, and instead answered to their requests with violence, feeling overconfident in their numbers and size that vastly overshadowed that of the gods. Though the fact of numbers and size may have been true, it said nothing for the might of the gods, who had quickly slain the foolish giants with ease. Only 2 giants escaped the downright slaughter that the gods unleash upon their brethren. These 2 giants, a father and son, named Thurgelmir and Bergelmir, ran to the rest of their kin for help, and soon enough the endless hordes of giants clashed with the sons of Bor. The roar and thunder of battle spread throughout Ginnungagap as the 2 seemingly unstoppable forces collided with each other and battled on a scale never before seen. As no days, seasons, nor time existed back then, by which one could measure the course of time, we cannot know how long had this primal conflict lasted, if mere hours or 1,000 years. What is certain, however, is that not only had the gods held out against the relentless hordes of giants, but actually managed to force them to flight and drive them from the battlefield, where so many of their kin now lay dead. The remaining giants fled to their primal father, the first giant Ymir, seeking his protection from the wrath of the gods. Ymir was a lazy fellow, and spent most of his life sleeping the time away, but he would not stand idle while his offspring were being killed. Ymir laughed at the pathetic presence of the gods, dismissing them by the simple sight of their size. But just like the rest of his kin, overconfidence would be Ymir's downfall, and before he would even land his first hit, the 3 brothers used their combined might and struck the primal giant down with a blow so powerful it shook the cosmos. For one single moment, the fires of Muspelheim stopped crackling, and the tireless winds of Niflheim stopped hissing. Even Surt, who had constantly walked on his flaming sword, stopped for a moment and turned his head in wonder what had happened. The gods have committed a feat that silenced the universe. Ymir staggered and fell down dead, his brethren scattering around like frightened children. The wound in Ymir's side ran deep, and soon oceans of blood started gushing from it. So much blood spilled from his wound that all the giants around him drowned in it soon after his demise, unable to escape. Only 2 giants managed to survive. These 2 were Bergelmir and his wife, who were able to reach a hollow tree trunk and ride the rivers of gore that drowned the rest of their kin. How they managed to find a tree trunk before there were any trees in the cosmos to speak of is beyond me, but hey, it's mythology. Nevertheless, Bergelmir and his wife were the last living giants at the time, and it's from them that all the giants in the future will descend from. As the sons of Bor watched the unintentional genocide that they have caused, they decided that from the ashes of the old world they would make a better one, and they would use Ymir's dead body to do so. They carved his body apart and used individual pieces to make the world we know today. From Ymir's flesh they made the very ground we now walk on. From his hair they carved the trees and flora of the world, and from his bones and teeth they had made all the rocks, from the smallest stones to the tallest mountains. They used Ymir's blood to make the rivers and lakes, and around the earth they set a ring of the deepest and widest ocean. At last, the 3 brothers hoisted up Ymir's skull and placed it over their creation, so it would reach all the corners of the world, and thus were made the skies. To make sure that Ymir's skull would remain in its place, the 3 brothers turned to the many maggots that started feet on Ymir's corpse, and gave them a resemblance of their own form. Thus they created creatures called dwarfs, and they have placed 4 of them under every corner of Ymir's skull, making them hoist it up and hold it in place. These dwarves were named Ostri, Vestri, Nordri and Sudri. East, west, north and south, and from them are named the cardinal points. To the rest of the dwarves, the gods granted a dwelling place in deep and dark caverns beneath the ground, where the dwarves would mine for precious gems and metals with which they honed their craft. When the gods looked upon the skies of the world, they found them strangely empty and barren, and so from Ymir's brain they fashioned the clouds of all shapes and sizes that now travel the heavens. So that the giants wouldn't again flood the world with their vile offspring, the gods gave them a home in the far corners of the earth, a mountainous region that came to bear their name, Jotunheim. However, the 3 brothers were aware of the resilience of the giants, and so they sheltered the greatest and most beautiful part of their new world by tall mountain ranges that they made out of Ymir's eyebrows. This lush and green inland rested in the very center of the world, and so the gods named it Midgard. When the gods gazed upon their creation, they found it sad and depressing, as there were no light to shine over the vast green fields and valleys, keeping its beauty hidden from sight. And so the gods ventured to Muspelheim, the realm of eternal fire, and from there they stole unquenchable embers and sparks that they have scattered across the void of Ginnungagap, thus creating the stars. The gods also figured they needed to create a cycle that would benefit their life on their new world, to make clear when it was time for work and it was time for rest. And so they have put the giants to work on achieving this task. In Jotunheim, there was a giantess named Nord, meaning night, whose hair were as dark as raven's feathers and her skin as pale as moonlight. The giantess, Night, had 3 husbands in her life and bore a son for each. With her first husband, she had a son named Ot, meaning space. With her second, she had a daughter named Jord, meaning earth, who was the very spirit of the world made manifest. And with her third husband, she had a son, the Gur, meaning day, whose hair were as bright as gold. The gods put Night and her son Day in separate chariots, each carrying one of the heavenly bodies, sun and the moon, around the earth. 12 hours have each to pass over the world before it is time for the other one. The Day seems to be in a greater hurry at some parts of the year because he is chased by Skoll, a great wolf who aims for swallowing the sun. When days are shorter in the year, it means Skoll is nearing closer to Day's chariot, and so he urges his horses to a greater hurry. Night isn't safe either though, as a second wolf named Hati is constantly trying to devour the moon she carries upon her chariot, and when nights are shorter in the year, it is her who forces her horses to a fast gallop. There is no clear origin given to these 2 wolves. Some sources say they are Surd's hunting pack, and that the fire giant had sent them in spite of the gods stealing fire from his domain. Others claim an old giantess living in the outskirts of Midgard sent the wolves in an attempt to destroy the great work of the gods as a revenge for the atrocities they have committed upon her kin. Only one thing is certain when it comes to Skoll and Hati. There will come a day when they will finally finish their pursuit and swallow the heavenly bodies, thrusting the earth into darkness once again. The day will be Ragnarok, and as last lights grow dim, the stars will fall down from the heavens, crashing to the ground, making Midgard shake in its doom. But even though that day is inevitable, it is still far away. As the gods were walking along the shore of their new world, watching the waves of the sea gently meet the sand, they saw 2 pieces of driftwood wash upon the beach. They would make nothing of it if it were any other pieces of wood, but these 2 were curiously shaped indeed. On a closer examination, they somewhat resembled the stature of the gods, though any detail on them was still crude at best. The 3 brothers consulted with each other, They were already pondering before that the earth needed a master to tame it, and this seemed as a great opportunity to do just that. And so the gods took the pieces of wood and carved them in their image until they resembled a man and a woman. But although they were made with the finest detail, they were still lifeless. So Odin granted them the breath of life, Vili gave them the sharp wits and feeling hearts, and lastly Ve gifted them hearing, sight and speech. Then the first pair of humans awoke into the new world that gods made, aware and ready to explore and experience. These first two humans were called Ask and Embla, and the gods gave them Midgard as their dwelling place, and from them all the humans in the world have descended. Now we already mentioned a few realms on our journey so far, like Muspelheim, Jotunheim and Midgard, but there are yet more to explore, and more importantly, the great force that holds them all together. And we will talk about that in the next episode. But this would be all for today, and I bid you all farewell. Until next time.